Okay. Everything's good, and good. Okay, a very good evening to everybody. Good afternoon to some. Good morning to others. Happy Saturday. I've been lazy all day, which happily enough is a very rare Saturday for me to be able to be lazy. Got everything done in the morning, and then I'm just like, that's my day. I hope your day is going good as well. So, this is just a, well, it's not just anything. It's my annual, well, it's not my annual stream either. What am I saying? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my stream. This is going to be a very quick breakdown of my video, which I recently uploaded, which was a recap of patch 6.3, God's Revel, Lands Tremble. And I'm also going to be going into theory mode about a lot of different topics regarding 6.3, 6.4, potentially 6.5 and 7.0, which we know nothing about. But we have a lot of ideas. So I'm opening the box, essentially. Like, I've had all these theories. I've been waiting for the right video to pour them out. I've been touching on some of them, but this is the right video. This is the time to start theory crafting, to start putting all those ideas out and just going, what is the one? What's the one idea that's gonna stick? Like, what is gonna happen to us? I can't wait until 6.4. Like, I'm chomping at the bit. Like, I haven't felt like this in a while for a major patch, but everything is just boiling up to the top here. The stove is overflowing, so we're just like, what is gonna happen? So let me quickly just bring up my video as well, because we're gonna need to break it down as well. And I'm actually supposed to be logged in as well, so actually just give me one moment, because I didn't log in, so I just need to tab out again and just go into standby because I need to log in. So give me one moment. I really should have been logged in beforehand. I completely forgot about it. This is what happens to me late on a Saturday. I get very scatterbrained. I'm just like, not in the right frame of mind. But I think Saturday is our decompressed day. Well, for most anyway, if we're not working. If you work the 9 to 5 on the weekdays, you're like, Saturday is my day for my brain to switch off. That's what I'm doing. My brain is completely switched off. So just give me a moment here. I'll get logged in and then we'll be good to go. I should turn off the music in game as well. Hell of a start, wow. Yeah, and I look pretty weird as my ninja as well. I was actually doing research for a different video, which is when I just logged off about an hour ago. So I don't even know where I logged out. Oh, I logged out back at home, okay. I was wandering around for almost 2 hours doing a bit of research for an upcoming video, but didn't really amount to that, and it amounted to me flying around killing stuff in Fates and just looking at stuff, so not too bad. That's usually all of my videos. I usually just roam around. So I'm back in now, so we'll come back to this and I'll turn the music off and then we are good to go. Okay, let me turn the music off. We don't need that anymore. As great as the card music is. Okay. So I should be in the right position for this as well. So the right backdrop would be Rads at hand. So let me bring up my new video. New channel. Videos. God's Revel. Lands Tremble. Okay, perfect. So the topic of my video, which I uploaded just about a week ago now, was a recap of patch 6.3's main storyline to get everybody prepared for patch 6.4. So I went over just the gist of the main story, went over a few bits and bobs about the intricacies of the other patches as well beforehand, so how the story has been developing from 6.1, 6.2 into 6.3 and how it's going to go into 6.4. I took a few liberties with my new video. I always try to change something, even if it's something extremely subtle, like how loud the music is, the audio modifications on my voice, for example. I try to change at least one thing in every video I do, but this video amounted to a great many changes. So it was primarily my editing style in terms of how the clips were actually blended together. And I actually used a lot more voice clips from the actual cutscenes, which is a lot easier with a video like this because all of the cutscenes, or the vast majority of the ones with the meat on the bone, essentially. Sorry if you're going to be hearing background noises, but it's very hot today and the window's open. I might have to close it in a minute. But yeah, back where I was doing. The meat is the cutscenes in the main story, and a vast majority of them, I'd say around 80% of those cutscenes are voiced, with the important ones anyway. Like, they tend to do a lot of the analysing of what happened with non-voiced cutscenes, essentially. That's where a lot of the meat is lost as well. Like, there's still a lot of meat on this bone, but I digress. It allowed me to do a lot more with this video. And I've been able to do this with my other patch recap videos as well, in terms of editing them and combining my voice, my narration, with the actual voice and cutscenes of the game itself, and actually just bringing a proper smooth transition between my voice of narration and into the actual cutscenes itself. So it worked out pretty well in my opinion. So like a prime example is
like before.
Alphino and Alice have been in Garlemald since not long after we returned to Aetheris, helping the citizens to rebuild their lives.
We have. But though the worst is...
Like, that's a transition. Like, I've been looking at the narrative and the dialogue and looking to actually integrate my voice into the cutscenes as much as I can. So I start my sentences and end my sentences where they can actually blend as much with the in-game cutscene as they can. And I think it's actually amounted to a much more enjoyable view style, because I want to kind of I want people to focus on the overall video. Like, I'm probably not as interesting to listen to, so I prefer to just get my narration out of the way. I'll get the main stuff, but I'll let the story speak for itself, as it already does, because most of the cutscenes are voiced. But I cut out a lot of it just to get to the raw facts, essentially. Like, you don't want to be looking at Alphino monologuing about a lot of different things that you're probably just not going to remember anyway. Like, I barely remember it. So you just want to get to the meat of the story, which is the story of 6.3. So, some eagle-eared, or eagle-eyed rather, or both, may have actually noticed that the editing style of my video changed halfway through the video. So, when I actually scripted out the entire thing, and then I recorded all my audio, and then I was blending that in video editors, I noticed that my style started to change. I noticed that some of the cutscenes didn't blend together as well as I wanted them to, and I was like, do you know what, there has to be a better way of doing this. So the cutscenes kind of blended together. They kind of like transition, not instantaneously, but they kind of blur together. So there's a fade transition of like less than half a second where they just blend together. That's my norm for cutscenes, and it's most of my video was actually done with that. But I did change a few things with how some of them were done. Notably, the cutscene between Euless and Zero. I decided to keep that as pure as possible. I wanted it to just look and sound like a pure conversation piece. So you can watch here, like.
I take it you're one of Alphino's comrades?
Comrade?
So that's an example there. Normally with this cutscene, he'd like, you're one of Alphino's comrades, and then there's like a almost awkward pause of like 3 or 4 seconds, which is normal for all cutscenes in FF14, and then she responds. I cut out the awkward pause essentially with that entire dialogue between the two of them, and made it sound like an actual conversation between two people.
We've entered into a cooperative pact, if that's what you mean.
Pact? No, nothing
so essentially it's just sped up. I just cut out some slices of the dialogue in between both of them talking, and just melded that together, and it made for a much more enjoyable viewing experience. It's more conversational speed, essentially. But this video was one I really enjoyed making. My recap videos are probably one of my favorite things to do, because in order to do them properly and do them their proper justice, I need to analyze them from one side of the spectrum to the other. So it usually ends up with me looking through the entire dialogue of a patch's dialogue from all the NPCs and all the characters, and just analyzing all the details and trying to compress them essentially into a 43-minute video, which is my longest recap video to date, primarily because I used a lot more clips, because the other videos were mostly me talking rather than the in-game characters. Excuse me. But yeah, it was a video I really enjoyed making, and the subject itself has been very exciting. So I'm really looking forward to finding out how all of this comes to a close. There were a lot of twists and turns. I think a lot of people were surprised that the Void wasn't even a factor. People were looking forward to jumping back into the 13th. But I like the way this turned out as well. It showed the other element of the story, where it's heading, where it is 13th versus the source essentially, which is what's being set up. But it was an enjoyable story to make. And where it ended, essentially, is with us standing back in Thavnair going, okay, what the hell do we do now? Which we can't do anything, essentially. There's not really much else I need to say about this, because it all directly relates to a subject in question, which is patch 6.3 and patch 6.4. But I guess I will end just saying that this video and the other patch recaps like it have been well received, and I'm so happy people have received it well, because there are a lot of players who will play for a main patch that came out. So a lot of people came back for 6.3, they played it out for like a month and then they left. But now there's an even longer pause between main patches, so they would have had to wait 3 months for another patch to come out. Or is it 3 months? Is it every 4 months, isn't it? Or so, give or take. But the gist of it is, these videos help people to get caught up. I mean, you can use the in-game cutscenes yourselves. Sometimes, depending on how far back you are in terms of progression, the New Game Plus would actually help you out as well. But it means playing the story again, which some people they just don't have the time or the patience for, essentially. So videos like this do help out a lot of people, and I get a lot of lovely comments from people saying that this is just what I'm looking for, this helped me get caught up. This video got the same ones, 6.2 got the same ones, and the 6.1 video got the same as well. So I'm glad it's helping out even one person, so it's been great. But I suppose we should get to the real meat and potatoes now, which is the conversation piece regarding 6.3 and patch 6.4. I was trying to identify what the music was there. But essentially, yeah, it ended with us in Thavnair again, having no access to the Void once again. And then you have Golbez doing his entire monologue. Then you have poor Ajdaya here, suffering in frickin' agony. But this also confirmed to us that she's actually fully conscious, because the first time we saw her, when Golbez had her imprisoned, she wasn't even moving. So I thought she was actually in stasis. But this shows now that she's been imprisoned for this long, and she's been suffering for this long as well. Like, ever since Alag fell, she's been suffering. I'm assuming we're going to get to the essence of how she was captured, because we know what happened to her was she dove through the Void Gate that was above the Crystal Tower at the time. This is where the majority of the Void Sent allied with Emperor Zande and Alag came from. So she dove through that gate, and then not long after, the gate closed. So it's assumed that she dove through and she ended up more than likely in the Cloud of Darkness's domain, and she more than likely cut off the source of the actual Void Gate itself. But I always found that strange, because I'm assuming that the void gate itself was being fueled by the crystal tower, which I think it was. But I'm assuming it had to be held open at the other side. So there probably was an entity at the other side of the void gate holding it open from that side. Like holding their hand through a stargate essentially, so the stargate won't shut down. I'm assuming whatever that was, maybe it was a mechanism, maybe it was a person, maybe it was a void scent. I'm assuming she killed or destroyed whatever it was, and that caused the void gate to close. But it trapped her on the other side. Now, there was no sign of her when we went to the Cloud of Darkness's domain. So it's assumed that she closed the void gate and then she probably flew off in order to escape the Cloud of Darkness and the other void center, or likely trying to attack her. I mean, as powerful as a member of the First Brood is, they're not invulnerable. It's a bit morbid, but it takes 13 individuals in order to kill one, at least. Bit morbid, but is what it is. Sorry, hit my mic. But I'm assuming she flew off and then eventually ended up in the clutches of Golbez. It's not known how long she's been as captive, but I'm gonna assume that the cutscenes we saw with Golbez were a recent occurrence. So I'm assuming that she's been flying around the void for a while, and then she was suddenly captured by Golbez. She might have been caught napping or something. Like, that's the most likely scenario in my mind, is that she was sleeping and then he put that spell over her, and now she's stuck in it. But this leads us very nicely to what's happening right now. So 6.3 is over. All 4 Archfiends are dead. I think we were surprised to have 2 Archfiends knocked out of the way again, because we got that in 6.2. 2 of them are gone. Or was it? Yeah, it was 6.2 where we lost 2 of the Archfiends. And then with 6.3 we lost 2 more. And then Golbez goes through his monologue saying, "You did your part to perfection," which they did according to his plan, which was distracting us and keeping us out of the way. Which definitely succeeded. But now he needs nobody else. He's on his own. But this also confirms, again, he's on his own. I'm assuming he does have void sent servants of some kind. So I'm assuming there will be some sort of armed force that will fight when we face off with him. As to what that will look like is anybody's guess, really. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Let me reread. I should really look at my notes because I always do notes. But let me quickly look at the comments as well. I've answered most of the comments, but I'll see through the others here. Thanks for the recap. Rubricante's language is very beautiful for someone who has languished in a harsh environment for several millennia now. A testament to his character, in my opinion. And draw forth that singular jewel deep within his heart. Just absolute bars, man. However, his design really bothers me. Other Archfiend have some visual cues from their past character personality in their void sent form. That's very true. Like Scarmaleone is another example. But Rubricante's design I cannot seem to connect to how he's represented in the fluff piece dedicated... the fluff piece. That's a lovely way of saying it. The fluff piece dedicated to him. I was going to mention the Shadowed Past if you wanted to learn more, but it looks like you already have. Monastic Mage turned into Swagmaster. Okay. I think drawing a parallel between Zero and the Fiends with Rekindling Dying Hope is the saving grace of the story arc. Alongside the secondary parallel with the Ascians and the paradise they sought to reclaim, some losing sight of it along the way. The story callbacks for Golbez using both Zodiac's remains and the First Brood Dragon are really important. It goes to show that the elements we've thoroughly tread before, one's Endwalker initially claimed to close the book on, are inescapable. That's very true. Regardless of what they said about closing the book, that book is never going to stay shut. There's too many threads tying it, as they're already saying in this comment. There's too many threads tying us to the past. We're never going to be rid of them. And that new things must be built by observing the old. Another important observation is with the evolution of the Echo flashback. The Warrior of Light seems to be able to produce it with precision this time around with a lack of headaches. perhaps Vanna's lessons did rub on them after all. I think actually what happened there, I think one, you are correct, we've actually gained much more experience with using the Echo, but I don't think we have it fully under our own control yet. But I think the trigger for it at this point was Rubicante was like, I will talk, you will listen. Then he closes his eyes and he focuses on his memories. I think that interacted with the Aether around him, and that's what triggered our Echo experience. But we picked up on it enough to be able to do it. So you are right, we are definitely learning, but I think Rubicante is the one to take credit here. He triggered that one. There also seems to be some evolution in the writing on how Voidsent die and remain on the source. Though I hesitate to call it a retcon, I believe that there will be an explanation in the next patch. Something Golbez and the Fiends have done to anchor them. I'm not really sure what you mean. There seems to be some evolution in the writing on how Voidsent die and remain on the source. As far as I'm aware, they don't remain on the source. If they die on the source, disconnected from the wheel, essentially, they rejoin the Great Flow, which is exactly what happened to the two Archfiends. They died and rejoined the Great Flow, so they're entirely disconnected from the rebirth cycle of the 13th when they're standing on the source and conceivably standing on any reflection. So when they die for good, which is exactly apparently what Golbez is looking to accomplish and what the two Archfiends were readily, happily able to accept when they died. I wonder if we'll finally learn who and what Golbez is, what is his personal goal. Although I wonder if the Scions will ask Graha to help them with travelling to the other shards. I'll get into that in a minute. There's a lot of theories. I've been gathering some of the theories together because people have a lot of theories on all of this subject, particularly of how 7.0 is going to be, so I'm going to elaborate on them soon. Editing skills top notch, thank you. Exactly what I was looking for. So essentially, yeah, everybody's just excited for patch 6.4. I really hope to see more BLM involvement in the patches, considering their job quests have always been tied to the Void. My theory is it's a trap to draw our characters back to the Void. That's very true. Like, black magic can trace its roots back to Mac and the Mackie Void mages. So I wouldn't mind seeing some Void mage interaction between the black mages that we have and then as they progress in the story, thanks to the Void. Because it is a part of the black mage history. It's forbidden now because of Void magic, it's dangerous, but it's still part of our history. I would love to see that actually take part. Sorry, it's pretty dry in here. Humidity is down to 30. Oh my god. It's very, very not humid today. Okay, so I guess I'll get into the theory mode now. I've got my notes here. So, everybody and their grandmother has a theory about what's going to happen. I have loads of theories. You guys have loads of theories. Everybody has theories about what is going to happen. So, I suppose I'll start with a model of how the expansions usually go about. So, for Heaven's Ward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringers, the model has remained a constant. So the expansion launches, or for example, Heaven's Ward launched. It went through its entire story for 3.0. Then 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 essentially progress the story and then cap it off, with then 3.4 and 3.5 setting the stage for the new story in the next expansion to come. That set the stage for Stormblood, and then Stormblood did the exact same thing, setting the stage for Shadowbringers. And then Shadowbringers did the exact same thing by bringing the Scions back from the first to the source in patch 5.3. And then 5.4 and 5.5 set the stage for the conflict with Garlemald and Endwalker, and the Telophoroi and everything else involved with it. Endwalker threw the model out the window essentially because it had to. It was tying a bow on all of the storyline plots in the main expansion launch. So 6.0 tied a bow in the entire story, and then the rest of the patches are setting the new story in motion. So essentially we removed the portion where we didn't need 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3 to finish off Endwalker's story, because it's already been written and it's already been done. 6.1 and beyond are setting the stage essentially for new stories to be written. But I think in particular 6.4 and 6.5 are the patches that are still going to set the stage for what 7.0 is going to turn out to be. So whatever happens with us going back to the Void, facing off against Golbez, more than likely, in my opinion, defeating Golbez, I think 6.4 and 6.5 are going to set the stage with something positively cataclysmic to set the stage for 7.0. Now, people have a million theories about what's going to happen, what 7.0 is going to look like. Like, some people have theories that 7.0 is just going to be our true new beginning. I'm still a believer in that theory, that 7.0 is just going to be a brand new story from scratch. Like, people thought that 6.1 was going to be that, and to be honest it was, but we ended up jumping back into our old habits again. A lot of people like myself believe that 7.0 is going to be a new chessboard. All the pieces are reset and a new game begins. We're going to be traveling to our new lands, potentially new reflections, exploring new stories, encountering new enemies, so on and so forth. So that's one theory. It's a theory I still subscribe to, but not fully, because I've been developing my theories for a while, and after reading other people's theories, and you guys have been posting theories to me as well, it's definitely influenced my thinking about what's going to happen. So I suppose let's just get the theories out of the way, right? So let's start with one theory, and then we'll move on to the next, the next, the next, and the next. Let me go up to see Varshan though, real quick. Little crazy person. I have a quick theory to share about Varshan as well. So we know that Vitra has one of his eyes in the mammoth vessel Varshan, both the young one and the new one. He transfers the eye between the two. That means that Vitra's true form, his dragon form, only ever has one eye in his socket, essentially. So he's missing an eye in any given time. So one eye is in Varshan here, and Vitra is inside Megaduta, which is one of the other eyes. But he has the eye of Ajdaya in his possession now. I think, because the eye has been greatly diminished, I think what's going to happen is Vitra is going to put the eye in his other socket in order to try and bridge a connection with Ajdaya, in order to try and find her. Because I think this eye is going to play an important role, but I think him putting it in the other socket will probably establish a connection, even across worlds, to Ajdaya. But the other reason I think he's going to do it is because the eye's aether is so diminished, and Vitra understands that she's going to need all the aether she can get when they find her. That he's put the eye into his socket in order to replenish its aether, so that when they finally find her, this eye is going to be brimming with aether again, and then he'll transfer it back to her, and that's an infusion of power that she will greatly need, more than likely. And this goes into my other theory now. So I suppose I should bring up the man himself. Where is he? So the man himself, Golbez. He's a very interesting character, although we haven't had any interactions with him. The only interactions we've seen with Golbez are him interacting with his archfiends and others, or monologuing to himself with Ajdaya, listening to his droning on as he goes, I will do such and such, like I am gonna bring salvation to the star, stuff like that, yada yada. It's an interesting change for us because we haven't had the single interaction with him yet. We've only interacted with his minions, which is very different from how we fought with other enemies before. Like, usually we have some sort of interaction with the big bad. but we've had zero interaction with him yet. He's never seen us, and we've never seen him. He doesn't know what we look like. And we don't even know what we look like. We only know the name Golbez. Like, thanks to the series, we know who he is. Thanks to cutscenes and gameplay, we know who he is. The Warrior of Light and the Scions and Barshan, they don't have a clue who Golbez is. Like, they know he's a big bad, but that's it. But I'm getting off track here. I have a few theories about Golbez, and so does everybody else. I will list out some of the theories here. Now, this is a theory that a lot of people have about Golbez, given the dialogue he stated, and a lot of other hints. A lot of people are of the opinion, first and foremost, that Golbez, the character, what he is a Voidsent, who used to be likely one of the races, more than likely a Hur, or whatever a Hur's equivalent is on the 13th. But a lot of people are of the opinion that Golbez is Azem Shard, essentially, on the 13th. Now, we know our soul was split along with the worlds, essentially, as was everybody's, really. And our soul shards were scattered along the world, and our primary one on the source. And we merged with Ardbert, who was our soul shard, or Azem soul shard, on the first, his soul incarnation there. A lot of people are of the opinion that Golbez is actually our Azem incarnation of the 13th. Which to me is actually, there's a lot of arguments to state that it is. First and foremost, he's a character of significant power, even for a Voidsent. Like, there's only a few powerful Voidsent, and he definitely seems to be one of them. Trapping a member of the First Brood is no small beer, essentially. But there's a number of cases to be made. You'd go through his dialogue, for example. He goes on about wanting to bring salvation to a star, and willing to do whatever is necessary in order to bring salvation to a star. It sounds very familiar, and it was to me instantly, because it sounds exactly what Ardbert was like. Ardbert embraced the darkness because he wanted to save his star, which is on the brink of oblivion. Golbez is much the same way. His star has already fallen, but he knows there's a way of bringing it back, of giving salvation, essentially allowing its denizens to finally die, including himself. And he's willing to do whatever is necessary. So it's entirely plausible that he may have been the incarnation of Azem Soul on the 13th, and he may have been their primary champion, because he does have a lot of knowledge. Prime example is he knows of the Ascians' revelations. It's most likely that most Voidsent and most people of the 13th didn't even know the Ascians existed. Most people on the source didn't know the Ascians existed. Only a set few people knew about the Ascians. Golbez apparently knew about the Ascians, so it's conceivable that he fought against the Ascians, which means he was likely one of the primary Memoriad warriors that fought against the Ascians. He may have actually been the first one that they gave knowledge in order to summon primal beings, which created the Memoriads essentially, and kicked off the war. So it's entirely plausible that's what he is. And if it's true, we'll know when we meet him. So for example, say halfway during our fight, for example, or even before our fight begins, if we make contact with him, either by punching him or just being in close proximity, maybe we're grasping together or something, our weapons clash together. If we see a connection there, then we know it's the truth, because we've seen our soul resonate with Ardbert's. So, but it was only his soul, it wasn't when he was alive though, which is the interesting part. So we may see a connection there, if it is true. Which could conceivably mean as well, if we end up defeating him, it's more than likely his soul shard will pass on and it'll reincarnate later, if he's defeated on the source. I mean, I'd love for us to get a third soul shard, but I doubt it, to be honest. It's a bit too much of a repeat of Shadowbringers. I don't think they'd go that far as to repeat that, because then it just sounds like we're on a quest. It sounds like the one, If you've ever seen that movie with Jet Li, The One, where this guy travels to parallel worlds in order to kill his parallel incarnations in order to grow stronger. It starts sounding like that. Great movie, by the way. You should really watch it. But there's just too many coincidences with Golbez. He knows too much. He knows so much more than other voice sent, and he's so much more intelligent. I think it is conceivable that he is Anzem's incarnation. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the truth. Now, here's another theory. Wait, where is it gone? There we go. So this is my personal theory about what Golbez is going to do in terms of... We know he has a plan, essentially. He has a plan for invading the source, apparently. Or he hasn't come out and said he's invading the source. This is one thing I actually want to make clear. He hasn't actually come out and said he's going to invade the source. He said he's going to invade a kingdom of light. Now, Zero did question Rubicante and say, so you're going to invade the source and take this world for your own. And he's like, just so. What we're overlooking is that Rubicante has never seen a world outside the void. So who is he to know what the source is, what the first is, what the other reflections are? He might just think one reflection is like the other and Golbez wants to invade another world. This is an important thing. What if Golbez's goal is not the source at all? What if he's looking to invade the first? Because the first clue is the kingdom of light. So, granted, our world is elementally neutral in the grand scheme. We're not aspected to any one element, not anymore. We were close to it at one point. But we do know one world that is, and that is the first, which is aligned to light, which is the polar opposite of darkness. So it's, in my mind, it's very conceivable that Golbez's plan is to bridge the gap between the 13th and the 1st. But this would actually mean two things. It would mean that the characters on the 1st, which we have been dying to get involved with this entire thing, because there's characters on the 1st who are directly related to everything that's happening on the 13th and the Void, that really should be involved with the story, but they're not involved because the story is disconnected because it played out on the role quests of Shadowbringers, which I still think is an oversight. But this would be a way for them to actually get involved and just skirt around the entire thing of spoiler alerts if you haven't done it yet and stuff like that. They have to address it eventually. These characters sitting on the sidelines don't make any sense. Like, we know they exist. We should be over there going right now, going, by the way, Yashola, we know a person who can make void gates. Would that person be useful to you? I will shove their soul into this crystal and I will bring them back to the source to get them to do this if you want. Like, there's just so many elements that are being overlooked because the plot needs to move forward, and it's frankly annoying me and it's annoying a lot of people. But yeah, back to my theory. I think it's highly likely that his target is the 1st. He did invade the source with his 2 archfiends, but that was only to get us out of the way. That's all he did. He didn't set up a base of operations. He didn't change anything on the source as far as we're aware. What he did was distract us by going to the far north of our world while he struck at the far south of our world in order to destroy our Void Gate, and sacrificed 2 of his Archmages in order to do it. He just wanted us out of the way so his plan could go ahead. Now this brings us to the plan. The plan. The man with the plan. He says he wants to break down the barrier between our worlds. Now, this thing's getting very hot. Breaking down the barrier between our worlds can mean a lot of things. It's not something we've actually... Well, we've only seen one example of breaking the barrier between world and another. And that is an Ascian rejoining. So that's a point where the barriers between worlds breaks down and the world rejoined with the source and caused a calamity in the process because of the ethereal alignment of the world itself. Now, his plan is to break down the barrier between worlds in order to merge his world with another, in order for the people on the 13th to die. Because he's doing all this so the Void Sent people on the 13th can finally die, instead of being constantly reborn and suffering. Because it is a torment more than anything, it's a curse. So I think that's what he's after. So he wants to break down, but he's already said this, he wants to break down the barrier between worlds. But here's what I think is going to happen the moment he does this. I think this is what the plot is going to be for 7.0. So we go there, we fight Golbez, but he actually succeeds in his plan to break down the barrier between the 13th and either another reflection or the source. This kicks off a calamity, a rejoining. So essentially what he's done is he's piggybacked off the Ascians' information and their knowledge regarding rejoinings, because they attempted a rejoining before. It makes sense that he'd be familiar with what's going on or what would happen. So he's trying to trigger a rejoining. But that's what 7.0 is. Essentially 7.0 is us fighting against a rejoining of one world to another. So all of this, everything that he's doing is setting up us attempting to stop a calamity of untold proportions, stopping the 13th, aka the Void, from merging with the source. And that would take place across an entire expansion. Because this plot just seems so big. Like, my theory is just too big for a patch. I think it would take an entire expansion to do that. But it would be a good way, because we know they've put a lot of attention to the fact that Y'shtola is looking for a way of bridging the gap between the source and the other reflections in order to allow free travel. Because right now we're the only ones that are able to do it. However, if Golbez succeeds in either breaking or weakening the barrier between worlds, this may allow for us to travel to other reflections, essentially. This might even be what allows us to travel back to the Void in order to stop Golbez, essentially. He might trigger whatever this barrier breaking between our worlds is. And we notice it right away and we're going, oh no, we need to go back there now. But the barrier is now weak enough that we can use other methods in order to travel to the 13th. But at the same time, that method will now work to travel to the other reflections because the barrier has now been weakened. The veil between the worlds has faded, essentially. It's not gone, but it's faded. But this all depends entirely on the relationship between reflection and source. It's not a relationship we know much about. We know that the source exists, we know the other reflections exist, and we know throughout multiple points in the history, since the Sundering, some of these worlds have been rejoined back into the source, through whatever means the Ascians use in order to do it. But we don't know the nature of the reflections. I've mentioned this in multiple videos. We don't know whether or not the reflections are worlds that are orbiting in different solar systems from our own. We don't know if they're in the night sky and they're just too far away from us to see them properly. Or my most likely theory is they exist in the same space, but are out of phase with each other in different dimensions. So if you've seen The Flash or a DC movie, for example, if things vibrate at a different frequency, they can't see each other. So if they're at a different frequency, they can't see each other. That's what I think the reflections are. They occupy the same space, but at different points in time, so they can't see each other. So that's when the rejoining is so instantaneous like that. Is one world rejoining another and just like that. There you go. It floods back in, but it doesn't need to move. It doesn't need to go planetary shift from one side of a solar system to the other, because they already exist in the same space. This is why we can't see them, for example, in our night sky. Although, like some of these bright stars, and again, these are not planets. Well, most of them aren't. We're assuming. Like some of these could be planets. The rest of them are suns. But some of these bright ones, for example, could be reflections, but we've no way of knowing. We just don't know the relationship. We don't know the essence of the story of what the reflections really are. We know they all have a moon. Now, at least. Thanks to 6.2, or 6.3 rather. But other than that, we don't know much. Let's see. What are the theories? So, if you want to ask questions as well, feel free to ask. I feel like I'm talking to myself. I know you're all probably listening, but if you want to tune in, just tune in and interrupt me whenever you want. I'll just continue on either way. I've been thinking about the fight. So we know a fight is coming up. It's called the Void Cast Dais, which I did Google. I have no idea what it means. I know Dais is a translation for days. So the Void Cast Days? I don't know. But the point is, I'm getting off track. There is a fight coming up. We know there's a fight coming up. And we're going to be fighting, more than likely, Golbez in order to thwart his plan. Or attempt to thwart his plan. I've been giving a lot of thought to the nature of what that fight is going to end up being. Now we know that 6.4 is going to be us first visiting. I suppose I should address this as well. Where is it? So the first things first is we're going to be visiting a new dungeon, which is this one here, which is called the Aether Font. Now we don't know exactly where this is. However, we do notice that there's particular land masses here, which are green. And then you have these icebergs here with polar bears. And then you have these Charlian structures in the background here. We don't know whether or not this is the Charlian homeland. It might be the north of Charlian, because we've only seen the coast. And we've seen Labyrinthos, which is just barely inland. But we haven't seen the northern part of the island. It's a fairly big island for Charlian. But we've only seen the city proper and Labyrinthos. This might be in the north, or it might be one of the islands in the north, because there is a lot of islands above Charlian. So this might actually be one of them. The other more likely theory, in my opinion, is that this is the Isle of Val. Because the Isle of Val does have a number of contrasts between its terrain. So you can instantly go from a snowy terrain to a different kind of terrain entirely in Eureka. So this would make more sense to me that this was the Isle of Val. With Ashdaya and the Shadow Dragon. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. So this is likely our bridge in order to get back to the Void. So we do a bunch of stuff on the source. And then we go through this dungeon, whatever we're going to be facing in this dungeon. And then we make our way to the 13th. That brings us to the fight. Now, what the hell is the fight? That's the question. My opinion is thus. You have to look to the past experience of a Golbez in order to try and figure out what his future is going to be. Now, granted, not all bosses in FF14 directly translate to what they were in the series, but they do kind of take liberties and inspiration from them. Golbez has taken heavy inspiration from his design. Now we know his lore is not the same. He was a half Lunarian in Final Fantasy IV. He's not a Lunarian now, he's a Void Sent. I'll get to that in a second, Vim. But essentially, Golbez is one of the last fights we have in Final Fantasy IV. He's not the final boss, but I've seen nothing to state that Zeromus is anything related to this. Although he may actually be the final big bad that we face in this expansion. You never know. I think it's highly likely though that Golbez is going to be fighting us but he's also going to have his Shadow Dragon in order to be able to fight with us. Now, the Shadow Dragon is, or was rather, a big enemy in Final Fantasy IV that we couldn't defeat. In order to defeat the Shadow Dragon that Golbez had at his side, we needed the aid of a different creature entirely called the Mist Dragon. And the Mist Dragon, along with the party, are able to defeat the Shadow Dragon and drive Golbez back. I think it's likely that Golbez is either able to corrupt or at least control Azhdaya in order to transform her into a different form, which is the Shadow Dragon. And he's going to use the Shadow Dragon during his fight. So I think it's going to be fighting Golbez, but he's going to be kind of like, he would have like junctioned Azhdaya to himself as a Shadow Dragon, similar to what, is it Ranjit from Shadowbringers? I can't remember his name fully, but the guy with the little snake dragon thing, the martial artist who kicked our ass. I can't remember his name. Ranjit, I think his name was Ranjit. But it's something similar to that. I have a feeling that's what the fight is going to be. Now, we're not going to have a Mist Dragon, more than likely, but we do have another dragon on our side, which is Varshan. So it is conceivable that Varshan will be the one in order to defeat the Shadow Dragon, which is Azhdaya being controlled, and liberate her from Golbez's control. And then he's able to use her eye in order to restore her back to full health. That's a conceivable idea in my mind what will happen. But the question here is, how will the portal to the 13th open anyway? That is a very good question. Now, we're going to this place, and we're not going here for willy-nilly's sake. We're going here for one purpose, to find a way back to the 13th. So this is likely going to be our gateway. It's an Aether font, and there's a lot of Aether erupting up. So this is likely a place where the Aether veil between worlds is probably weaker, for example, and it will allow us to bridge a connection between this world and our own, or this world and another. But it's likely mainly due to the fact that this place is under Charlene control. Y'shtola have probably found it in their archives, and then she figured out this might be our way in order to bridge a connection. They have this place, they've researched it, they know what it's capable of. It may be able to deliver us onto the 13th, and at the same time deliver us to other places. Sorry, just hearing that. That's correct as well. The Mist Dragon actually did show up at the burn. Interestingly enough, the Mist Dragon's model is identical to the models that you see in Ultimate Duel. So that Mist Dragon is actually the model that we got for these. So all of these dragons here are all using an old model that was put into the game ages ago in order to show us the burn. But I don't think there's going to be a Mist Dragon. I think they're just going to change the story for FF14's perspective. It would be great if that portal allowed us to bring Vitra in its full form. And then it's Shadow Dragon versus Vitra, essentially. Which would be cool. I would love to see Vitra doing a full fight in this dragon form. Just as conceivable as well, I wouldn't be surprised if we found a proper way to get there without needing a small void gate in order to fit a big dragon through. I wouldn't be surprised if Vitra and Azdaya's siblings don't get involved in this as well. We know Hraeshvalgar is on the board, as is Tiamat. I can see the both of them getting involved as well. I had this theory back in 6.2 as well. Or specifically when 6.3 happened. Sorry, I should have said. Because when Vitra let out his roar, he did an etheric roar in order to reach Azdaya's presence, which he felt. But I have a feeling that Hraeshvalgar and Tiamat, and more than likely Midgard Sormer, all heard that roar as well. So they likely know exactly what's going on. So I'd love for them to get involved. It's just optimism in my part, but I really would love for all the siblings to get involved. Oh, this music gives me... I hate it. Via Perifico. Ugh. That place. Ugh. But yeah, I would love a face-off similar to what we got between the Shade of Bahamut and Tiamat. Valtyrika looks nothing like this. The Dravanian Hinterlands is the other reasonable location with the architecture, in my opinion. That's actually... it's a fair point as well. It actually does look like... I didn't think of that. The trees actually do echo... That's a good point. Although you don't see any snowy masses like this at this part of the Dravanian Hinterlands anyway. I mean, there is a gigantic forest underneath us, which is vast and expansive. So if you look here, for example, this forest and this lake and rivers stretches on forever. And there's so much of it. Like, this could be actually Dravanian Hinterlands. There is a case to be made for it. The trees are definitely similar. Like, if you look at the trees. Yeah, same trees. You might actually be onto something. This might actually be the Dravanian Hinterlands. So there may be an Charlian facility somewhere here. Something they played around with or tested with that is just sealed away, because we know they did seal away a number of things. The library was locked, the anti-tower was sealed away, given the key was given to Matoya. So there may be other facilities around here, which would explain what the ruins are there as well. We also don't know if Golbez is a Void Center or what he was before becoming one. I mean, he's powerful to fight and seal Ashdaya. We don't even know if he took Zodiac's Aether before he is gone. The fact that he and Ashdaya are on the moon means he already did something with Zodiac's Aether. That is a discussion point between a lot of people. Some people are of the opinion that when Zodiac's primary body died on the source, his shards on the other reflections also dissipated. I don't believe that. I think the shards lived on. I think they were sealed away, and the fact that they were sealed, they're portions of Aether essentially. We don't exactly know what they are. We know, looking at Zodiac's model, that he was missing arms and limbs, so it might be one of his arms was on the 13th. You never know. I am a proponent of the theory that the shard didn't endure, and he broke the seal over it. Or the seal was broken itself when Hydaelyn died, for example. So when she faded on, the seal probably faded away. But we did see Golbez take out the Watcher. Now, we do know that was confirmed that it is the Watcher now, because he is on the moon, which means he likely faced off against the Watcher, defeated the Watcher, or at least drove the Watcher back. And now he had possession of the piece of Zodiac, essentially. But who's to say the Watcher was actually defeated? We only saw him raising a sword against the Watcher. We didn't see him strike the Watcher down. That's an important bit. The Watcher might actually still be enduring on the 13th. And he's not a normal being either. He might be immune to the corruption of the Void, essentially. So he might actually still be active, and he may be a link for us to get there. Or he may be actually an ally that we have to count on the moon to allow us to actually contend with Golbez. So who's to say the Watcher is not going to play a new part? It's a different Watcher, but a Watcher nonetheless. So that's pretty much all my theories anyway. If you have any other theories, just post them here. Otherwise I'm going to continue monologuing. But yeah, I'm still of the opinion that whatever's going to happen now in 6.4 is going to come to its conclusion in 6.4. With 6.5 then setting the stage for 7.0. But I think the story of 6.5 is going to be directly related to the results of the battle between ourselves and Golbez. I think we'll defeat Golbez. But at the same time, I think his plan will actually be enacted. And we'll have to be dealing with the repercussions of it in 6.5 and then 7.0. Well, yeah, looking at the Dravanian hinterlands now, it definitely kind of looks like it could be here. So it might be ruins just off the map that we don't realize, like over these mountains, for example. We are in the far north. There's no snow or icebergs nearby, so it might be near the coast. Let's remember. Let's not forget that Nuncreft led the survivors of the calamity here to the hinterlands, and then they constructed a vessel on the coast and took that to Charlian. So it's conceivable we might actually be going to the landfall of where, or the departure zone of where Nuncreft built the ship and led on. So it might actually be over there. If you look over there, there's nothing in the distance. So this might actually be the sea. So it might actually be over there. And speaking of the Watcher, what about the 12s in other shards? If the source has a 12 and a Watcher, wouldn't that mean the other versions of them also? That is entirely dependent on whether or not the 12 are actually related to Hydaelyn at all. It's most likely, but the 12, don't forget, are directly related to Eorzea for some reason, and they themselves say it. So they might actually just be something specific of the source. We don't have any answers yet, but we don't have to wait long to find out. 6.4 is going to give us the answers. 6.5, sorry. 6.5 is going to give us the answers. But yeah, the primary theory regarding them is that they were creations of Hydaelyn, and now with Hydaelyn gone, they are fading away themselves, essentially. But yeah, I do love your idea, Chrissy, about being over here. It does make a lot of sense, because I have thought about it. Where was the place that they actually set off in order to get to Charlian? So this is as far north as you can get. So the place we're looking for might actually be over here, or beyond these mountains here, where there's some Charlian ruins. Makes you think, doesn't it? Seymour. Seymour, Seymour. Oh god, look at the render distance. Oh, this place looks like an MMO from the year 2000 when the render distance is like this. Whoo! Oh boy. That's not good. Oh, get me out. I feel ill. Get me out of here. Get me down here, quick. Oh, much better. Those times were good while they lasted, but not anymore. Essentially, that's everything I wanted to go through. So I've gone through most of the theories about what we're to expect. But I suppose to finish off the video, I want to address Pandemonium. Now, when I was doing this video and making the recap of 6.3, at the same time I was... I don't know if they would fade away from the front rate, but still we don't know much about them or why they want to fight the Warrior Light. Yeah, there's some sort of... It's almost like a test. But we'll find out in 6.5. I'll do other videos on that. But, as I was saying, when I was doing the recap for 6.3, I planned to do it in 2 parts. But the recap ended up turning out to be so long that I couldn't add the Pandemonium storyline breakdown to it either. But my issue as well is, as I've said a few weeks ago, I am focusing only on making videos that are able to be relevant after a long time. If I make a recap for Pandemonium raids for the story coming up in 6.4, it's going to be completely irrelevant afterwards, and it's not going to be much use to anybody after that fact. Like, my recap videos for main patches are good because it allows people to leave and then just get caught up with a YouTube video and then proceed with the story when 6.0 comes out. So I expect that my video here for 6.3 to get a lot of traction in the coming weeks, and it's already started to get traction. But I digress. I had planned to do an entire Pandemonium one, but it ended up being enormously convoluted. Like, the story of Pandemonium is an incredibly convoluted story compressed into a very small form. So it's like trying to cram an entire Harry Potter book into a magazine, essentially. So I ended up just going, I can't really make a video about this. So I'm thinking I might actually do a stream about it at some point. So I might do a stream shortly before 6.4 comes out to go over the full story of Pandemonium. Or maybe when we finally get the date announced, I'll probably do it in a week or two. But yeah, Pandemonium's story is just so... it's so strange. Like, they're adding pieces to it, and then we're getting new reveals after new reveal after new reveal. And they're keeping us guessing, which is brilliant. Like, I don't mind that at all. It's just getting a bit confusing to me. I'm going, how did these characters relate? How did this character know? Is this something that's going to be coming into relevance in 7.0 with the main story? Like, I know the raids don't really translate to... the raid stories don't really translate to the story of the main scenario, essentially. Not much, anyway. But it just has me curious whether or not the effects of what happens in Pandemonium and the fact that it's shown up in the Ethereal Sea is going to have some bearing on the story going forward. But I can't say for certain because it is side content, but it just, in my eyes, seems to be boiling into something that is going to affect the overall story. But I just can't figure out what. This is Final Fantasy VII's world map music after Meteor is summoned, if I recall correctly. Well, I do recall correctly, I'll never forget that music, or that game. But yeah, my point is, the Pandemonium story has been a very convoluted. We know Pandemonium has suddenly appeared in the present, well after the Sundering. We're questioning whether or not there are unsundered within Pandemonium or not. Like, for all we know, Eric Thonios is actually in there. Although I do have other theories about him, but I think I want to save it for the stream. I think everybody else would have picked up on what the theory is regarding Eric Thonios anyway. Because it's just, it's too convenient. Or it's too close, essentially, between him and a certain other character. I just want to go down and see in Pandemonium first. Why do we have to go through such a long walk to get to Pandemonium? Now here's my question as well regarding 6.4. Are we going to be coming here to enter Pandemonium? Or are we going to be going back to the past in order to do the raid in Pandemonium then? So I'm just confused at that fact. Like, are we still going to be going back in order to figure out? Because the characters involved in the story are back there. Case in point, Elidibus, aka Themis. He's back there. We know he's gone in the present. He's not in there. La Hebrea is gone. He's not in there. The only one who could possibly be in there is Eric Thonios and or Athena. if she's back on the board. We don't know what happened to her. But oh, it's just been nagging at my brain what the hell this thing's doing here. And after doing the research on the story again, to figure out the pieces and figure out what's going on, I'm just even more confused. We're missing a big piece, and it's just the story doesn't make sense without it. I'm sure when they add the piece there, it's going to be, oh, so that's what's happening. But right now I'm just going, what the hell is it doing here? Yeah, it is really crazy. I don't know why, but I can't help but feel like the two timelines were contracted somehow. Like we used the prison to go to the past, for example. That's a very good idea. Using the prison to go back to the past. But we already have a bridge to the past. And it's showing up in its full form. And likely a lot down there. Like, look at the mist. You can't really see it, can you? The mist extends all the way down. So this is the full pandemonium. It's all the way down there. Including the depths of the facility. But it's just... oh, it was nagging at me. And doing the research for the story just made me think... a lot of this doesn't make sense. Because they did leave us at cliffhangers. Because we still don't know exactly what Eric Thonios' part is in all of this. We don't know exactly what Athena was attempting to do. We do have an idea. But we don't know specifics. They kind of cut the story memory fragment off as soon as they found that out. Do you know what? Screw it. I'll talk about it here. I'm not doing another stream about this. Just about this subject. Let me open my notes. Give me a second. So, happily I kept it in the notes of the same video. Let me scroll down a bit. I pretty much wrote the whole thing for the script for Pandemonium, but in the end I was just like, I'm not making it. It's a video that's not going to age well, so I'm not going to do it. Okay. I need the unending journey in order to do this. I can't do this without the unending journey. So, stick with me now. We're going down the Pandemonium lane. He's not trolling us on this, or at least I hope he isn't. It wouldn't be the first time, but yeah, I just need the unending journey. If I'm gonna guide people through this, I have my notes here. Like I have the script of the video, so it's gonna be me literally reading the script. But the entire video started off with one primary cutscene, and that cutscene is right at the end here. Let's play it out. So we're back on Elpis. Long after we left. Or not long after we left. And we have this mysterious white-robed figure. An advisor.
The constancy of this place never ceases to amaze me. An ocean of souls. Shimmering and eternal.
The very moment we all figured out, oh my god, he's Elizabeth.
And yet, something stirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Steeped in darkness.
Yeah, pretty much when this scene came out, people realized, oh my god, that is actually Elizabeth. Because we didn't know who the voice was. Well, we didn't know who the person was because there's no name attached.
Alas,
but the voice actor and the way his mannerisms worked, we're like, oh my god, it's Elizabeth. Now, what I find interesting is the entire conversation.
To the depths, you and I,
so he's here, and he's waiting for a guiding star. And Azem told him, there's going to be a guiding star.
The sights we shall see.
So, this can mean only one thing. Now, as far as we're aware, our incarnation, or our original incarnation as Azem, is not omnipresent. He can't see the future. So how the hell would he know that we're going to be traveling back? Aside from the fact that Vana told him about us, which is likely. She may have mentioned something. But even she wouldn't have been able to discern whether or not we'd travel back to see Pandemonium, because she was gone at this stage. So, no way for her to know. And they can't communicate back in time. Time travel is not, well, we think it's not really a thing. They knew what it was, but they didn't do it. But the fact that SM knew that we were traveling back is interesting, which had me tying this entire thing to a theory I had regarding us not being finished in the past. So I still have a feeling we're going to be traveling back. And for all we know, Pandemonium showing up might have been Azem's doing. You never know. But I digress. So this is how Pandemonium begins. We end up traveling back and we end up meeting with Themis. And then we head to Pandemonium. So this is entirely done in the side content. So we'll skip over one scene in order to get to Arachthonios. No, wrong one. Actually, yeah, I've just one thing I want to say about this. So I'm going to be doing all of this in weird order, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, do you see him? Claudine. My theory regarding this fellow is that he is a soul incarnation of Arachthonios. He looks so similar. The hair is a bit different, but the facial features kind of look alike. I think Claudine, it's reasonable to say he may have been Arachthonios' incarnation. It was only a theory I came up with recently, but I was just looking at his face and I was just going, he just looks so similar. But the fact that Claudine has that crystal now in his possession and he disappeared. And we know that these crystals were used by the Asians in order to imbue the memories of the convocation. So when they brought a new incarnation from one of the shards for one of the other convocation / Asians, they gave them the memories of the original convocation member. So who's to say that that crystal right here doesn't belong to Arachthonios? And the moment Claudine was able to examine it and able to unlock its secrets, the memories of Arachthonios transferred into him, which is why he disappeared. So now when the 6.4 story comes around, Claudine returns, but he's not Claudine anymore. He's Arachthonios. When I had that theory, I was just like, oh my god, could that actually be possible? So Arachthonios, all along, his memories were there. That warning was actually him. And he imbued them in the crystal. Because you think about it in a time loop as well. We only went back to Pandemonium because we found that crystal. Or they found that crystal. And they're like, something's going on in the past and we need to go back. And then it starts the chain of events. But eventually, when we finish the entire story of Pandemonium, that crystal needs to be created, needs to be imbued with memory, and it needs to be cast away on the tides of the ethereal sea. So, who's to say that in the end of our story, Arachthonios is not going to do this and it's going to be a full loop complete? Now, that's one theory I have of him. So this is something that is just like, as soon as I thought about it, I was just like, oh my god. It just makes so much sense. We don't get any hints about Claudine other than the fact that he's a Charlian scholar. We don't know if he actually has a weakened etheric level or not. It's not really something that people talk about in modern society, to be honest. But my other theory is concerning a certain individual. Is it this one? Yeah, so let's have a look at Ericthonios here, look. No. Yeah, Themis, we get it. I want to see Ericthonios. Yeah, I may as well just guess my theory now. Theory number 2. After doing all the research and diving back and forth throughout this entire story, the one thing that's constantly bugged me is La Habrea. Now, the La Habrea we know, like we see him right here, right away, and we're like, I know who you are, La Habrea. Now, think about the story of Pandemonium for a moment. The La Habrea we know, the Ascian La Habrea, is a very emotional character. One could even call him an unstable character. He's a fiery, fire in the belly sort of thing, like, you know. And he's one who will laugh and cackle and have a great time, just like an anger, like he'll spew anger, he'll spew rage. That's the La Habrea we know. Think about the La Habrea we've met in the Pandemonium storyline, or rather the two La Habreas. We see the fake one and then the real one. So the fake one turns out to take the name of Hephaestus, and then the real La Habrea just is La Habrea. Let me skip over this cutscene just to find him. My theory is, we know, thanks to the storyline of Pandemonium, that La Habrea tore his soul in two in order to get rid of Athena's memories. But at the same time, he took away a lot of his emotions. So greed, envy, those emotions were torn away into that soul shard and put into a crystal. And that crystal manifested later in a copy of La Habrea, which turned into Hephaestus. But think about this La Habrea right now, the way he is with his soul torn in half. He's a fairly emotionalist character, even when talking to his son and talking about the events that happened. He is so stoic. He's nothing like the La Habrea we knew. So, I think there's two possibilities going forward. Possibility number 1. La Habrea merges himself once again with the memories within that crystal that was Hephaestus. And he becomes a whole. He becomes whole again with his full spectrum of emotions. Or theory 2, he just goes crazy and regains these emotions again. It's so peculiar. The fact that this guy is nothing like the La Habrea we knew. For Elidibus' sake, he's much like his original. Like Themis is much like the Elidibus we knew. He's passionate. La Habrea is nothing like ours. So, oh yeah, my 2 theories, sorry. I did leave out one theory. The other theory is that Hephaestus returns. And the La Habrea we see all along is actually that he takes the name La Habrea again. And that's the Ascian we saw all along, not this one. Like, if something happens where that Hephaestus returns, is he the La Habrea we knew all along? Because the other La Habrea that we know, like the Hephaestus, is much more like the La Habrea we knew than this one. Think about that for a moment. Like, from an emotional standpoint, is the La Habrea we knew more like this stoic one or Hephaestus? That's a very good point as well. The body snatching did weaken him immensely, and it might have just strained his memory. But if we're to believe everything that happened in Pandemonium, he lost the ability to feel these emotions. Maybe the Lahabrea we know is a clone of him. I mean, it would make sense this he doesn't recognize us in a realm reborn. That's also a very good point. This Lahabrea is interacting with us right now. And yet he doesn't remember us. Although it might have been so long that he doesn't remember us. This is where the wibbly wobbly timey-wimey really gets annoying for me, because this is why I hate time travel, essentially. I hate time travel for this exact reason. That you find nitpicky things in stories that you can't really justify. And you have to try and justify them because the story is now putting you in this place of going like, we've traveled back. Why didn't the characters recognize us? It's like a Star Trek thing, like, I see the new USS Enterprise. Wait, why didn't the old Enterprise look like this? Because it was made in the 60s, that's why. It's that sort of stuff, like. But yeah, that's my theory about Lahabrea. There's something going on here. I think we're going to see a change. But I'm still a firm believer that Eric Thonios is Claudine. And I think Eric Thonios and Claudine had a direct interaction with why Pandemonium is actually on the source in the present today. But yeah. But I think I actually will make another video and go into the Pandemonium storyline. I want to get my notes ready because it's an entire script and I don't want to read it out because it will just bore everybody. By the time I went through the entire basic scripting of it, it was so long and so convoluted that I couldn't even make sense of it. So I think I will come back to this in another stream before 6.0 launches. Just the hazard of using time travel in an ongoing, evolving work. Exactly. Time travel rarely works in any media, especially in games. Like, I've never seen anybody pull it off perfectly. Square Enix did it perfectly for 6.0. That was a perfect time loop. And they also did it perfectly with Grahatia traveling back from the alternate futures to the past and creating an alternate timeline. But it's all getting convoluted now with a story that's happening in a side quest, which may or may not directly relate to the main story. Like, I just wish we'd get a proper relation. It's all happening in the same game. Why can't they just relate together? This is what annoys me. But yeah, I think I'm going to finish the stream there. I need to get to bed soon. I have something to do. But yeah, I will clip this stream up and release it all as one video again, as always. Just to really quickly reflect on the poll as well that I actually did. So I did ask people whether or not you'd want me to stream Final Fantasy VII Integrate, because I played the original Final Fantasy VII. Alexander is another possibility, Chrissy. Alexander is probably the one element that, yeah, he's another time travel example. I keep forgetting Alexander. But yeah, back to this. The poll is pretty stretched. Like, 44 people voted. Like, 41% said yes to stream and clipping it. 23% said fully clipped and upload it. And then 36% said not interested. It's a very... So half the people want me to do it, essentially. And the other half don't want me to do it. I'll think about it and see what happens. I probably will just record it and then just clip upload, to be honest. So people can decide to watch it or ignore it. But yeah, I'm finished there. So I'm just going to finish the stream off here. As I said, I'm going to clip it fully and I'm going to start working on my new video soon. I've already been doing some preliminary research for it. It ties into 7.0 in some ways and what's happening right now in some ways. But yeah, I do look forward to it. So everybody, thank you very much for joining, and please enjoy the rest of your weekend. Use it for as much rest as you can, which is what I've been doing. I've been napping all day, which has been amazing. I rarely get to nap all day. But anyway, I wish you all the best of luck and have a good one.